She entered the Wolf King's fortress with poison sewn into her corset and vengeance carved into her heart. 3 years of training, a lifetime of hatred, all leading to this moment standing before Alpha King Theron as his newest courtier. But when he took her hand in greeting, when his amber eyes locked onto hers, something ancient and primal sparked between them. And by the way his grip tightened ever so slightly, by the knowing smile that curved his lips, she realized with cold dread that the predator she'd come to hunt already knew exactly what kind of prey had walked into his den. The grand hall of Shadowmere Keep thrummed with barely contained violence. Lysa kept her expression carefully neutral as she watched from her position among the new courtiers, though her stomach churned at the scene unfolding before them. In the center of the obsidian throne room, a young wolf shifter, barely more than a boy, knelt in chains, his body bearing the telltale marks of silver burns. "Behold," announced Lord Commander Aldrich, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, "a traitor to the crown. Caught. Sending messages to the resistance in the Thornwood territories." The Wolf King sat upon his throne of black iron and bone, his massive frame draped in dark furs despite the warmth of the great fire pits. Theron Nightfall, the alpha who had united the fractured wolf clans through blood and conquest. The same alpha who had ordered the raid that killed Lysa's family 3 winters ago. Asterisk. Stay calm, asterisk, Lysa reminded herself, fingering the hidden compartment in her corset where the ghostwood poison waited. Asterisk, you're Liana of House Silvermoon now, a loyal courtier from the eastern provinces. Asterisk. The punishment for treason, Aldrich continued, raising a silver-tipped whip, is 50 lashes, followed by exile to the waste. The boy, he couldn't be more than 16, raised his head. His eyes, a startling violet color, met Lysa's across the room. In them, she saw not fear but desperate hope, and something else. Recognition? But that was impossible. She'd never seen him before. "My king," the boy spoke, his voice cracking. "I accept my fate, but I beg you, my sister knows nothing of this. Please don't." "Your sister will serve in the castle kitchens to pay your family's debt," Aldrich interrupted coldly. "Consider it mercy." The whip rose, silver glinting in the firelight. The court held its breath in anticipation. "Wait." The word left Lysa's mouth before she could stop it. Every eye in the throne room turned to her, including the penetrating amber gaze of the Alpha King himself. His eyes, she noticed with a chill, held a glimmer of amusement. "You wish to speak, Lady Silvermoon?" Theron's voice was deep, rumbling like distant thunder. Pyres. This was the first time he'd addressed her directly since her arrival 3 days ago. Lysa stepped forward, her mind racing. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to remain invisible, slowly gain trust, get close enough to poison his wine at the harvest feast. But those violet eyes— "Your Majesty," she said, dropping into a graceful curtsy. "Might I suggest an alternative? The boy is young, strong. Wouldn't he serve the crown better in the Bloodguard training grounds than dead in the waste?" Murmurs rippled through the court. The Bloodguard was elite, brutal training that few survived, but those who did became the king's most lethal warriors. Theron leaned forward slightly, and Lysa caught his scent: pine, smoke, and something wild that made her pulse quicken against her will. "You would sponsor him?" the king asked softly. "Take responsibility for a traitor?" It was a trap, obviously. But Lysa had trained for this, learned to think like them, to play their games. "I would," she said clearly. "If he fails, I'll take 20 lashes myself." And the boy's eyes widened in shock. Aldrich looked disgusted. But Theron smiled. "You have a peculiar sense of mercy, Lady Silvermoon." Theron's words echoed in the empty corridor as Lysa made her way to the guest quarters. She froze, her hand instinctively moving to the hidden blade at her wrist. She hadn't heard him approach impossible for a human, but the Wolf King moved like shadow itself. "Your Majesty," she said, turning slowly to face him. He stood mere feet away, having dismissed his guards. This close, she could see the faint scars that traced his jaw, the unnatural stillness of a predator at rest. "I merely saw potential where others saw waste. Did you now?" He moved closer, and Lysa fought the urge to step back. "Tell me, what else do you see when you look around my court?" "A test." Everything with him was a test. "I see strength," she said carefully. "Unity forged from chaos." His laugh was soft, dangerous. "Pretty words. But your eyes." He circled her slowly, and Lysa felt like a deer being stalked. "Your eyes see something else entirely." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the direction of the training grounds. Shouts, then screams. Theron's demeanor shifted instantly from predatory to protective, and he moved toward the sound with inhuman speed. Lysa followed, curious despite herself. In the courtyard, the boy she'd saved, Kai, she'd learned was convulsing on the ground. But this was no ordinary seizure. His body contorted unnaturally, bones cracking and reshaping, trapped between human and wolf form. Blood frothed from his mouth, mixed with something black and viscous. "Moonbane," growled Captain Roth of the Blood Guard. "Someone's poisoned him with moonbane." Lysa's blood chilled. Moonbane was the Resistance's weapon of choice, a toxin that prevented transformation, causing young wolves to tear themselves apart from within. But she hadn't authorized this. Who? "Clear the courtyard," Theron commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Then his eyes found hers. "You, stay." The courtyard emptied rapidly, leaving only Lysa, Theron, and the dying boy. Kai's violet eyes rolled back, his small body seizing violently. "Person." "You sponsored him," Theron said quietly. "His life is your responsibility." Lysa knelt beside Kai, her healer's instincts overriding her mission. The moonbane was already in his bloodstream, spreading like wildfire. Without thinking, she pressed her hands to his chest, feeling for his heartbeat. Erratic, failing. "There's an antidote, common," she heard herself say. "But I need blackroot and silver ash. And," she hesitated, "and wolf's blood. Fresh." Theron didn't hesitate. He bit into his own wrist, offering it to her. Their eyes met over the dying boy, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition of something neither wanted to acknowledge. Lysa worked frantically, mixing Theron's blood with herbs from her hidden pouches, the same pouches that contained the ghostwood poison meant for him. The irony wasn't lost on her. As she forced the mixture down Kai's throat, she whispered the old healing words her grandmother had taught her, words from before the wars, when humans and wolves lived in harmony. Kai's seizures slowed, then stopped. His breathing steadied. "Interesting," Theron murmured, his wound already healing. "A lady from the eastern provinces who knows the old ways. Who carries herbs that even my healers don't recognize?" His amber eyes bore into hers. "Who are you really, Lady Silvermoon?" "Someone who doesn't believe in waste," Lysa replied, meeting his gaze steadily even as her heart raced. Theron stood, offering her his hand. When she took it, he pulled her close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "The boy will live thanks to you," he said softly. "But moonbane in my castle means there's a traitor among us. Someone who wanted to make an example of him." His thumb brushed across her knuckles before releasing her. I wonder, will you help me find them? The castle's ancient library became Lysa's refuge in the days following Kai's poisoning. Officially, she was researching defensive wards at the king's request. Unofficially, she was searching for any weakness in Shadowmere Keep's defenses that the resistance could exploit. You saved me. Lysa looked up from a dusty tome to find Kai standing in the doorway. The boy moved carefully, still recovering, but his violet eyes were clear and grateful. You saved yourself, Lysa replied, returning to her book. I merely prevented waste. Kai moved closer, limping slightly. That's not what I mean. He lowered his voice to barely a whisper. I know who you are. What you are. Lysa's hand found her blade, but Kai raised his hands peacefully. I'm not your enemy, he said quickly. My grandmother was like you. A threadweaver. I recognize the patterns you traced while healing me. Threadweaver. Lysa hadn't heard that word in years. The ancient human magic. Nearly extinct now, the ability to see and manipulate the threads of fate that connected all living things. It was what made her the perfect spy. She could sense intentions, detect lies, occasionally even nudge events in subtle ways. You're mistaken, she said coldly. The resistance didn't poison me, Kai continued as if she hadn't spoken. Someone in the castle did. Someone who wanted to frame them. He paused. The king suspects, but he can't prove it without revealing his own secret. What secret? Before Kai could answer, the temperature in the room dropped. Shadows gathered in the corners, coalescing into wolf shapes with glowing eyes. Lysa stood, power crackling through her veins as she prepared to defend herself. Stand down. Theron's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The shadow wolves dissipated, and he materialized from the darkness itself, not through the door but from the very shadows of the room. Shadow walking, Lysa breathed. It was supposed to be myth. No alpha had possessed that power in 300 years. Leave us, Theron commanded Kai, who bowed and retreated quickly. They stood alone among the ancient books, surrounded by centuries of knowledge and secrets. Theron approached slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. You're full of surprises, Lady Silvermoon, he said. A noblewoman who knows ancient healing, who carries herbs from the Thornwood territories, whose very presence disturbs the threads of fate around my castle. He knew. Somehow. He knew. I could ask the same of you, Lysa countered, her chin raised. An alpha who walks through shadows, who allows a human to treat his wounds. Who keeps resistance sympathizers as servants. Touched. Theron smiled, a real smile that transformed his harsh features. Perhaps we're both more than we appear. He moved closer, and Lysa felt the threads around them thrumming with tension. In her sight, she could see them silver and gold strands connecting every living thing in the castle. But the threads between her and Theron burned brighter, pulled tighter, as if fate itself was drawing them together. There's going to be an attempt on your life, she heard herself say, at tomorrow's feast. The moonbane was a distraction. I know, he replied simply. Just as I know you carry ghostwood poison in your corset. Just as I know the resistance sent you to kill me. Lysa's blood froze. Then why? Because the moment you walked into my throne room, the threads of fate shifted, Theron said, reaching out to touch a strand of her dark hair. Because you saved a boy you didn't know? Risking your mission. Because you're not what they told you I was, and perhaps... His hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. Perhaps I'm not the monster they told you I was either. The threads between them pulsed with heat, and Lysa saw it a glimpse of possibility, a future where the wars ended not in blood but in unity. But she also saw the price. Betrayal, pain, transformation. Don't, she whispered, though she didn't pull away. I'm here to kill you. As I know, he murmured, his forehead touching hers. But you won't. How can you be sure? Because if you were going to, you would have let Kai die. You would have let the court blame the resistance. Instead, you saved him, knowing it would draw my attention. His breath was warm against her skin. Your compassion betrays you, little spy. The harvest feast arrived wrapped in silk and shadows. Lysa stood before her mirror, hands trembling as she secured the final pin in her hair. Tonight was the night. The ghostwood poison remained hidden in her corset, its weight both damning and desperate. 3 weeks she'd been at court. 3 weeks of dancing around Theron, of their charged conversations in empty corridors, of him watching her with those knowing amber eyes. 3 weeks of fighting the pull she felt toward him, threads of fate be damned. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Lady Silvermoon, the king requests your presence in his private study before the feast. Alone with him. Perfect opportunity or perfect trap. Theron's study was a contradiction, austere yet warm. Walls lined with maps, marking territory gains and losses, but also shelves of poetry, philosophy, histories of the time before the wars. He stood with his back to her, gazing out at the blood moon rising over Shadowmere. Do you know what tonight is? He asked without turning. The harvest feast, Lysa replied carefully. More than that. He faced her, and her breath caught. He wore formal attire, black leather and silver, every inch the predator king. But his expression was almost vulnerable. Tonight marks 3 years since Thornwood. Her heart stopped. Thornwood, where her family died. I've been waiting for you. You know, he continued, moving closer. The Resistance's chosen weapon. The last threadweaver with enough power to actually kill me. I don't. Your sister survived. The words hit her like physical blows. She died. They all died. Your wolves? My wolves were there, yes, but not on my orders. His jaw clenched. Lord Commander Aldrich led that raid. Claimed it was necessary, that Thornwood harbored resistance leaders. By the time I learned the truth, the damage was done. Lies. It had to be lies, but the threads never lied, and she could see them now, pulsing with the bright clarity of truth. Sarah lives, he said softly, hidden in the northern sanctuaries. I've been protecting her, waiting for you to come for your vengeance so I could tell you the truth. Lysa's knees buckled. Theron caught her, his arms strong and steady around her. This close, his scent overwhelmed her forest and flame and home, impossibly home. Why? She whispered against his chest. Because Aldrich has been playing both sides, fueling the war, ensuring neither human nor wolf ever wins. And because he pulled back to look at her, one hand cupping her face. Because the moment I felt your threads enter my territory, I knew. You're my mate. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Mates were sacred among wolves, souls bound across lifetimes. But she was human. It was impossible. I'm not a wolf, she protested weakly. No, he agreed, his thumb tracing her lower lip. You're something far more dangerous. You're the bridge between our worlds. The threadweaver, who could bind human and wolf together again. If you chose to. His mouth was inches from hers, and Lysa felt herself drowning in the pull between them. Every thread of fate in her vision was singing, pulling them together with inexorable force. This is why you haven't killed me, she realized. You could have stopped me any time. I could never hurt you, he murmured. Even before I knew who you were, your threads called to mine. But the choice has to be yours. Stay as my enemy, and I'll let you go. Stay as yourself, and help me end this war the right way. And if I stay, she whispered. His eyes flashed gold in the moonlight. Then I claim you as mine, and you claim me as yours. The bond will change you not into a wolf, but into something new. Something that hasn't existed since the first age, when threadweavers and alphas ruled together. The ghostwood poison burned against her ribs. One kiss, distract him, slip it into the wine on his desk. Mission complete. Instead, she reached up, fingers threading through his dark hair. Show me, she breathed against his lips. Show me what we could be. When his mouth claimed hers, the world exploded. Every thread of fate in the castle suddenly blazed to life in her vision. But more than that, she felt him. His memories, his guilt over Thornwood, his desperate hope that she might choose him over vengeance. She felt his wolf recognize her as his mate, felt the ancient magic stir in response. But most importantly, she felt the truth of it all. The war, the lies, her sister alive. When they broke apart, gasping, a silver mark had appeared on her throat, a crescent moon wrapped in threads. Mine? Theron growled, his voice more wolf than man. Yours, Lysa agreed, then pulled him down for another kiss. And you're mine. The feast erupted in chaos exactly as Theron had predicted. Lysa stood beside his throne, still reeling from their bonding, the silver mark on her throat hidden beneath a careful arrangement of silk scarves. The lords and ladies of the court whispered behind their fans, sensing something had shifted but unable to name it. Lord Commander Aldrich raised his goblet. To the harvest, to the king, to victory over our enemies. The court echoed the toast, but Lysa's newfound connection to Theron let her feel his tension. Through their bond, she sensed what he sensed: wrongness in the air. Threads of fate pulled too tight. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Servants transformed into assassins, hidden resistance fighters bursting from concealed passages, and Aldrich himself lunging for Theron with a blade of pure silver. But Theron was already moving, shadow walking from his throne to appear behind Aldrich, claws extended. Around them, the Bloodguard engaged the attackers, while courtiers screamed and fled. Now! Aldrich shouted, and more fighters poured in, but these wore neither resistance colors nor royal badges. They bore the mark of the Void Covenant, the secret organization that had been manipulating both sides of the war. Lysa felt the threads around her sing with danger and opportunity. She could see the pattern of the attack, could read the intentions of every combatant. Without thinking, she began to weave, pulling at fate itself to shield the innocent, to redirect blades, to expose the true traitors. A resistance fighter, someone she recognized from her old cell, locked eyes with her from across the room. His expression shifted from relief to horror as he saw her standing with the Wolf King. Traitor, he snarled, charging at her. Theron materialized between them, but Lysa placed a hand on his arm. No, let me. She faced her former ally, seeing the threads of his life, the loss, the anger, the manipulation by the Covenant. Jarek, she said quietly. They lied to us. The Covenant orchestrated Thornwood. They've been playing us all. Lies. But doubt flickered in his eyes. My sister lives, Lysa continued, loud enough for the other resistance fighters to hear. Theron protected her. Covenant. The Covenant wanted us to kill each other while they claimed both our lands. The fighting slowed, confusion rippling through both sides. Aldrich snarled, his form shifting, revealing not a wolf but something else, something wrong. Scales rippled beneath his skin, and his eyes turned reptilian. Worm blood, Theron growled. You're not even truly wolf. The age of wolves and humans is ending, Aldrich hissed. The Covenant will rule both your corpses. He lunged at Lysa, recognizing her as the greater threat, the threadweaver who could expose their schemes. But she was ready, weeks of suppressing her power finally unleashed. Silver threads erupted from her fingers, binding Aldrich in a web of fate itself. Through the great windows, howls echoed not from inside, but from beyond. The wild packs had come, summoned by their king's call. But more surprisingly, resistance fighters appeared on the battlements, not attacking, but defending against Covenant forces approaching from outside. Your message got through, Theron said in her mind through their bond. Both sides are beginning to see the truth. The battle raged for hours, but when dawn broke, the Covenant forces were dead or fled. The great hall stood filled with an impossible sight. Resistance fighters and royal guards standing side by side, united against their common enemy. But the unity was fragile. Centuries of hatred couldn't be erased in one night. Jarek approached carefully, eyeing Theron with deep suspicion. If what you say is true, he said to Lysa, if Sarah lives, I'll take you to her, Theron promised. All of you who wish to verify the truth. But know this, the Covenant still has armies. They've been building strength in the wastes while we fought each other. We'll need to stand together or fall separately. Lysa felt the threads of fate shifting, showing her glimpses of possible futures. Wars and alliances, betrayals and bonds, and always, always, the burning connection between her and Theron, pulling her toward a destiny she'd never imagined. You chose him over your own people, Jarek said quietly when Theron moved away to address his guards. I chose the truth over comfortable lies, Lysa replied. And he's not what we thought. None of this is. Jarek's eyes fell to her throat, where the silver mark peeked through her scarves. He marked you. You let a wolf claim you. And I claimed him back, she said firmly. We're going to end this war, Jarek, the right way. But even as she spoke, she felt a darkness stirring through the bond. Theron was hiding something, some price of their connection he hadn't told her. The mark on her throat pulsed with heat, and for a moment, she could have sworn she felt fangs pressing against her own human teeth. 2 weeks had passed since the Harvest Feast revelation, and Lysa's world had become unrecognizable. She stood in the war room, surrounded by maps and uneasy alliances. Resistance leaders sat beside wolf commanders, their distrust palpable, but their cooperation necessary. Through it all, she served as translator, not of language, but of intention, using her threadweaver abilities to smooth over centuries of hatred. The Covenant has taken the Eastern Citadel, reported Scout Commander Vera, one of the few wolves who'd accepted Lysa immediately. They're moving faster than anticipated. Lysa studied the threads of fate surrounding the map, seeing patterns others couldn't. They'll strike here next, she said, pointing to a seemingly insignificant outpost. It controls the water supply for 3 provinces. But even as she spoke, a wave of dizziness struck her. The room tilted, and she gripped the table for support. Through their bond, she felt Theron's immediate concern from across the castle. Power. I'm fine, she said aloud, though he hadn't spoken. The others looked at her strangely. Perhaps Lady Lysa needs rest, suggested Jarek, who'd remained as a liaison. His concern seemed genuine, but threads of suspicion still colored his intentions. I said I'm fine, Lysa snapped, then immediately regretted it. Her temper had been fraying lately, emotions running hotter and more volatile. That night, she stood before her mirror, studying the changes. The silver mark had spread, delicate tracings like veins of moonlight extending down her throat and across her collarbones. Her eyes, once purely brown, now held flecks of gold. And her senses, she could hear conversations 3 floors away, smell emotions on the air, feel the presence of every living thing in the castle through the threads, passes. It was overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. You're changing faster than expected. Theron's reflection appeared behind hers, though she hadn't heard him enter. These days, he moved between shadows as easily as walking. "You knew this would happen," she said, not quite an accusation. "I knew it was possible," he corrected, his arms encircling her waist. The old texts speak of bonded pairs where one was human. The human either died, transformed into a wolf, or, he hesitated, or became something else, something between. His lips brushed her neck, sending shivers through her. A moonweaver. Human enough to walk in daylight, wolf enough to run with the pack, powerful enough to bridge both worlds. Power. And if I don't want to become something else? She challenged. Though even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. Powers. The bond was irreversible. The changes already begun. "Then I'll find a way to stop it," he said immediately. "Even if it means breaking our bond." The thought sent physical pain through both of them, the mark on her throat burning in protest. She turned in his arms, seeing the genuine anguish in his eyes. "You would do that? Let me go?" "I would do anything to save you," he murmured. "Even lose you." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted outside. They rushed to the window to see resistance fighters and wolf guards facing off in the courtyard, weapons drawn. "He killed my brother!" a resistance fighter shouted, pointing at one of the blood guard. "Your brother was a murderer!" the guard snarled back. Lysa was moving before she consciously decided to, power flowing through her as she threw open the window and leaped down 3 stories, landing with inhuman grace. The fighters froze, staring at her in shock. "Enough," she commanded, and threads of power lashed out, forcing weapons to lower. "We are not enemies anymore. You're not even human anymore," someone whispered. And Lysa realized with cold certainty that they were right. The ease with which she'd jumped, the power flowing through her, she was becoming something else. "No," she agreed, feeling Theron materialize beside her, a united front. "I'm not. I'm what we need to survive what's coming." But doubt gnawed at her. Each day brought new changes, new powers, new instincts that weren't quite human. And through the bond, she could feel Theron's fear, not of her, but for her. Late that night, she found Kai in the library, researching frantically. "You're looking for a cure," she said. It wasn't a question. "There has to be something," Kai insisted. "Some way to slow the transformation, to let you control it." Pow. "And if there isn't?" Kai's violet eyes met hers, filled with the wisdom of someone who'd seen too much too young. "Then you become the bridge between worlds, as the prophecies foretold. The moonweaver, who ends the age of separation. Enwe, En werewolf, Siomares. The moonweaver who ends the age of separation. Prophecies?" Lysa felt a chill. What prophecies? But before Kai could answer, pain lanced through her skull. Images flooded her mind. Armies of covenant creatures, cities burning, and at the center of it all, herself, transformed into something beautiful and terrible, standing with Theron as they faced an ancient evil. When the vision ended, she was on the floor, Kai supporting her head. "It's starting," he whispered. "The awakening. You're beginning to see not just the threads of present fate, but future possibilities." The attack came at dawn, But Lysa felt it coming hours before. She woke, gasping, threads of fate screaming warnings in her mind. Through their bond, Theron jolted awake beside her. "They're coming," she whispered. "Not the Covenant. Something else. Someone else." Within minutes, the castle was mobilizing. Lysa stood on the battlements, her transformed senses stretching out into the pre-dawn darkness. She could feel them hundreds of presences moving through the forest, but wrong somehow, corrupted, power. She breathed, recognition hitting her like a physical blow. Her sister stood at the forest's edge, but not as Lysa remembered her. Sarah's eyes glowed with an unnatural green light, and beside her stood figures in Covenant robes. The Covenant had found her in the northern sanctuaries, twisted what Theron had tried to protect. "Hello, sister." Sarah's voice carried impossibly far, laced with magic that made Lysa's bones ache. "I've come to save you from the monster you've bound yourself to." "Sarah, what have they done to you?" Lysa called back. "They showed me the truth," Sarah replied. "How the Wolf King slaughtered our family. How he's corrupted you with his mark. But it's not too late. Come with me, and we'll burn his kingdom together." Theron appeared beside Lysa, his presence steady and warm. "She's been turned," he said quietly. "The Covenant found her despite my protections. They've twisted her memories, especially the trauma." Quote her. "You tried to keep her safe," Lysa said, seeing the truth in the threads. "You hid her to protect her, and they found her anyway." "I failed." His voice was heavy with guilt. "I'm sorry." But there was no time for recriminations. Sarah raised her hand, and the corrupted army charged. They weren't quite human anymore, twisted by Covenant magic into something faster, stronger, wrong. The battle was brutal. Lysa fought with powers she was still learning to control, weaving fate itself into weapons and shields. But every time she had to strike down one of the corrupted humans, she saw what they had been: farmers, merchants, innocents twisted into weapons. Lysa. Sarah appeared through the melee, moving with supernatural speed. "Look what he's done to you. You're becoming a monster like him." They fought sister against sister, Sarah wielding Covenant magic while Lysa tried desperately not to hurt her. But Sarah had no such qualms, her attacks vicious and aimed to kill. "I mourned you," Sarah snarled, green fire erupting from her hands. "I thought you died at Thornwood. But you were here, warming his bed, betraying everything our family stood for." "That's not what happened," Lysa pleaded, dodging another attack. "The Covenant lied to you. They're the ones who—" "Silence!" Sarah's magic lashed out, and Lysa felt it trying to corrupt her, to twist her thoughts as it had twisted Sarah's. But the bond with Theron blazed to life, his wolf strength combining with her threadweaver powers to repel the invasion. Through the chaos, she saw him fighting three corrupted at once, protecting a group of human refugees who'd sought shelter in the castle. Even in battle, even shifted to his massive wolf form, he was careful not to kill unless necessary, always protecting, never the monster Sarah claimed. "You see?" Lysa grabbed her sister's wrist, forcing her to look. "He's protecting humans. Your king is protecting our people." For a moment, doubt flickered in Sarah's eyes. Then the green glow intensified, and she screamed, breaking free. "Lies, all lies." She pulled out a blade ghostwood, Lysa realized with horror. The Resistance's poison of choice, the same type she'd once carried. "If you won't come willingly, I'll free you the only way left." The blade descended toward Lysa's heart, but suddenly Kai was there, throwing himself between them. The ghostwood pierced his chest, and the boy, brave, foolish, wonderful Kai, collapsed. "No, Lysa," caught him, her hands immediately glowing with healing power. But ghostwood was absolute poison designed specifically to kill magical beings. Had to, Kai whispered, violet eyes already dimming. Saw the threads. You're the bridge. Can't let them break you. Through her tears, Lysa saw Sarah stumbling backward, horror breaking through the Covenant's control as she realized she'd killed an innocent boy. What have I? Sarah's eyes flickered between green and brown, her true self fighting the corruption. Theron appeared in human form, and instead of attacking Sarah, he knelt beside Kai. Thank you, he told the dying boy. You saved her. You saved us all. Kai smiled weakly, his hand finding Lysa's. The prophecy, he whispered. Remember, the choice isn't between human and wolf. It's between division and unity. Choose. Choose unity. My spirit will remain in the threads. As his last breath left him, something profound shifted in the air. His essence, his very soul, seemed to dissolve into the threads of fate themselves, becoming part of the great tapestry. The corrupted army hesitated, their magical compulsions wavering. And Sarah collapsed, the green light finally fading from her eyes. The funeral pyre burned through the night, Kai's body wrapped in the honors of both wolf and human traditions. Lysa stood between worlds, resistance fighters on one side, wolf pack on the other, unified in grief for a boy who'd belonged to neither yet died for both. And Sarah sat in chains, though they were more symbolic than necessary. The Covenant's magic had broken when Kai died, his sacrifice somehow severing their hold. She remembered everything now, both the truth and the lies they'd made her believe. I killed him, she whispered over and over. I killed that boy. The Covenant killed him, Lysa said firmly, though her heart ached. They used you as a weapon. In the war room, revelations came quickly. Sarah, freed from corruption but drowning in guilt, revealed everything she'd learned while under Covenant control. They're not from here, she said, voice hollow. The Covenant they're from across the void sea. They came here centuries ago, fleeing something worse. They've been feeding on our conflict, growing stronger from the bloodshed. Theron leaned forward. Feeding how? Death releases power, Sarah explained. Especially death, charged with emotion, hatred, fear, betrayal. They've been harvesting it, using it to fuel their transformation. Into what? Lysa asked, though part of her already knew. Dragons, Sarah whispered. They're becoming dragons. And their leader, the one they call the Void Mother, she's almost complete. Maybe a few more battles, a few more massacres, and she'll have enough power to achieve her final form. The room erupted in arguments. Some called for immediate attack, others for retreat. But Lysa was studying the threads of fate, seeing how they all led to one inevitable point. We can't fight her, she said quietly, and the room fell silent. Not as we are. Divided, we're exactly what she wants, an endless source of conflict to feed on. Even united, we're just humans and wolves against something far older and more powerful. Then what do you suggest? Jarek asked. Lysa looked at Theron, seeing the same realization dawning in his eyes. The Moonweaver ritual, she said. Not just for me, for all of us who choose it. The room exploded again, but Theron's voice cut through. Explain. Kai saw it before he died. The choice isn't between human and wolf, it's between remaining divided or becoming something new. Something unified. She stood, power radiating from her transformed form. I'm changing not into a wolf, but into a bridge. What if we could offer that choice to others? Humans who want to understand wolves. Wolves who want to reconnect with their humanity. That's insane, someone protested. You want to transform our entire population? Not transform, Lysa corrected. Evolve. Give them the choice to evolve, to become what the Covenant fears most. A truly unified people who can't be turned against each other. Every thinking the face of the feel. I think it subscribed to the moral. They talk the maid is scream to the self-fire. They absolutters some signs. If you look the maid is, he so fightus for moral. Sarah looked up, tears streaming down her face. It could work. When I was corrupted, I could feel the Void Mother's thoughts. She fears synthesis above all else. Pure humans she can corrupt. Pure wolves she can control. But beings that are both and neither, they're immune to her influence. You're asking people to give up their humanity, Jarek said quietly. I'm asking them to expand it, Lysa countered. To become more, not less. Theron stood, moving to her side. It would need to be voluntary. No forcing, no coercion. And we'd need to find a way to make the transformation survivable for more than just a few. The blood moon returns in 3 weeks, Vera pointed out. If we're going to attempt this, we need the old texts, Lysa realized. The original Moonweaver rituals, before they were lost to time. Sarah raised her head. The Covenant has them, in their citadel. They collected all the ancient knowledge to make sure no one could use it against them. A suicide mission. The threads of fate around that path were dark, full of death and danger. But also, I'll go, Lysa said. We'll go, Theron corrected immediately. You can't both go, Jarek protested. If you're both killed, then you'll lead, Lysa told him. You and Vera and all the others who've learned to see past hatred. But this is something we have to do. She could feel it in the threads. This was the crucial point, the moment that would determine everything. And at the center of it was a truth she was only beginning to understand. Her bond with Theron wasn't random. They were chosen, not by the Covenant or by fate, but by the world itself, trying to heal centuries of division, problem. When do we leave? Sarah asked, standing despite her chains. Power. You're not coming, Lysa began. I killed that boy. I led an army against you. The least I can do is help fix what I broke. Sarah's eyes blazed with determination. Besides, I know the Citadel's layout. You need me. Theron nodded slowly. A small team. In and out before they know we're there. Lysa could see the threads. And she knew better. They would be discovered. They would be challenged. And one of them might not return. She just couldn't see who. The Void Citadel rose from the wastes like a wound in reality itself. Black stone that seemed to absorb light, twisted spires that hurt to perceive directly. Lysa, Theron, Sarah, and Vera approached under cover of a moonless night. But stealth felt pointless. The Citadel watched them. Lysa could feel its attention like cold fingers on her spine. The texts are in the lower sanctum, Sarah whispered, her insider knowledge their only advantage. But the Void Mother, she's in the throne room above. If she senses us, she already knows we're here, Lysa said quietly, reading the threads. This is a trap. Then we spring it, Theron said simply. Vera, you and Sarah find the texts. Lysa and I will provide a distraction. That's suicide, Vera protested. That's the plan. Theron's eyes met Lysa's, and through their bond she felt his resolve. One way or another, this ended tonight. They split at the Citadel's entrance. The interior was worse than the outside corridors that shifted, when not directly observed. Stairs that led up and down simultaneously, air that whispered with the voices of the consumed. Together, Theron murmured, taking Lysa's hand. Their combined power, his shadow walking, Her thread weaving created a bubble of stability in the chaos. They found the throne room easily. The Void Mother wanted them to find it. She sat on a throne of crystallized screams. Lysa could hear them. Thousands of death cries frozen in black glass. The Void Mother had once been beautiful, perhaps even human, but now she was something else. Her form shifted constantly, sometimes woman, sometimes dragon, sometimes nothing but hungry void. The Moon Weaver and the Shadow Wolf. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. How poetic! The universe's last desperate attempt to stop the inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Lysa said, though the threads around the Void Mother were dark, so dark she could barely perceive them. Your bond disgusts me, the Void Mother continued, rising from her throne. Human and wolf, predator and prey, trying to pretend you're equals. But I'll show you the truth. Love is just another word for consumption. She attacked without warning, not with physical force, but with pure entropy, the absence of connection, the death of bonds. Lysa felt it hit their mate bond like acid, trying to dissolve the very thing that connected her to Theron. They fought back together, shadow and thread intertwining, but the Void Mother was older, stronger, fed by centuries of death. She pulled at their bond, twisted it, turned their love into pain. You feel it, don't you? She laughed. How he's changing you, consuming your humanity bite by bite. How you're weakening him, making him soft, vulnerable. You're destroying each other. And for a horrible moment, Lysa felt it, the truth in the lie. She was changing, losing parts of herself. And Theron was softer, less ruthless than a wolf king should be. Their bond was transforming them both. Yes, the Void Mother hissed. Break. Sever the connection. Save yourselves from each other. Through their bond, Lysa felt Theron's anguish, his fear that he really was destroying her. She saw him pull back, trying to shield her by weakening their connection. No, she gasped, but he was already retreating into himself, trying to spare her from the transformation he'd caused. The Void Mother laughed, raising her hand for a killing blow. Love always destroys itself in the end. But then Sarah and Vera burst in, carrying ancient texts that glowed with silver light. We found them, and more, the original prophecy. Sarah's voice rang out, reading from the text. When the void comes to consume all bonds, two shall become one shall become many, and many shall become whole. Not through dominance, but through sacrifice, not through purity, but through synthesis. But I did too, I see, but I did it, I too, but I did it, I did it, I t, but I did it, I t. The Void Mother snarled, but Lysa understood. She grabbed Theron, forcing him to look at her. We're not destroying each other, she said fiercely. We're creating something new. That's what terrifies her, not our differences, but our unity, despite them. She pulled him close and bit him, not gently, not carefully, but with all the ferocious love she felt. Her human teeth shouldn't have been able to pierce his skin, but they did, because she wasn't fully human anymore, just as he wasn't fully wolf. The feedback loop through their bond was instantaneous and overwhelming. Not pain, but transformation, complete and irreversible. Lysa felt herself dissolving, not dying but expanding, becoming part of something greater. She was herself, but also Theron, but also something entirely new. The Void Mother screamed, as silver light exploded from them. Where two beings had stood, now stood one, then, two, then, something that flickered between both and neither. They were moonweavers, true bridges between worlds. Impossible, the Void Mother gasped. No, Lysa, divided by Theron, divided by, they said in perfect unison. Inevitable. The citadel shook as reality itself rebelled against the Void Mother's presence. She was a creature of division, of consumption, of endings. But what stood before her was synthesis, creation, beginning. Still, she was too powerful to defeat directly. As the citadel began to collapse, the Void Mother's form solidified into a massive dragon of pure entropy. "You may have evolved," she snarled, "but I have fed on death for centuries. You cannot stop me." She was right. Even transformed, even unified, they weren't strong enough. Not alone. They barely escaped the collapsing citadel, shadows and threads carrying them away as the Void Mother's roar shook the wastes. But escape was temporary. Within hours, her army would march on Shadowmere. In the war room, Lysa and Theron stood before their gathered allies, still flickering between unified and separate forms. The transformation had stabilized, but using it drained them both. "Show them," Sarah urged, holding up the ancient texts. Lysa took a breath. "The Moonweaver ritual can work on a large scale. During the blood moon, with willing participants, we could transform dozens, maybe hundreds, create an army of beings immune to the Void Mother's corruption. But," Theron continued, his voice heavy, "the success rate without a mate bond is less than 1 in 3. We'd be asking people to risk everything." "2/3 would die?" Jarek asked, horrified. "Without modification," Vera said, studying the texts. "But there's another way. A catalyst that could improve the odds to almost certain survival." Everyone turned to her. The bonded pair at the ritual's center would need to disperse themselves, spread their unified essence across all participants. They'd survive, but we'd never be separate again, Lysa finished. Never fully human or wolf, never fully individual. We'd exist as part of everyone who transformed, and they'd carry pieces of us forever. The room fell silent. "Pi. You're asking us to choose," Theron said slowly, "between staying as we are and watching our people die, or sacrificing our individual existence to save them." "It's not a sacrifice," Sarah said quietly. "It's evolution. You'd become the literal bridge between races, existing in every transformed being." Through their bond, Lysa felt Theron's fear not of death, but of losing her, of losing himself, of becoming something so diffused that they'd forget what they'd been. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. The blood moon rises at midnight." One day to say goodbye to individual existence. That night, Lysa and Theron stood on the castle's highest tower, looking out at the camps below human and wolf, resistance and royal, all united in desperate hope. "I don't want to lose you," Theron whispered, pulling her close. "You won't," she promised. "We'll be together, just differently. What if we forget? What if we disperse so completely that we lose what makes us us?" Lysa turned in his arms, pressing her forehead to his. Through their bond, she shared every memory, their first meeting at the throne room, their first kiss, every moment of love and conflict that had brought them here. "Then we'll remember through them," she said. "Every transformed soul will carry our love, our bond. We won't be lost, we'll be everywhere." He kissed her then, desperate and deep, and for a moment they merged completely, showing them a glimpse of what they would become. Vast, interconnected, eternal, together, he murmured against her lips. "Always," she agreed. The next morning, volunteers gathered far more than expected. Humans who'd lost everything to war, wolves who'd grown tired of division, even some who simply believed in the possibility of unity. Nearly 300 souls, ready to risk everything, passes. But as the blood moon rose, as the ritual circle formed, a horn sounded from the wasteland. The Void Mother had come, her army of corrupted thousands strong. They had hours at most. We can't hold them off and perform the ritual, Vera said desperately. Lysa looked at Theron, seeing the same realization in his eyes. They had to choose complete the ritual and save who they could, or fight and likely lose everything. No. Sarah stepped forward. You perform the ritual. The rest of us will buy you time. You'll die, Lysa protested. Quote, maybe, Sarah smiled sadly, but I owe a debt. For Kai, for all of them. Let me pay it. One by one, others stepped forward. Jarek, guards, resistance fighters. Those not participating in the ritual would hold the line. The choice is made then, Theron said quietly. As the first wave of corrupted crashed against Shadowmere's defenders, Lysa and Theron took their positions at the ritual circle's center. 300 volunteers arranged around them, each holding a silver thread connected to the central pair. Once we begin, Lysa announced, her voice carrying across the courtyard. There's no stopping. Whatever happens, whatever you feel, hold on. We're about to become something the world has never seen. The blood moon reached its apex, bathing everything in crimson light. Lysa met Theron's eyes one last time as individuals. Ready? She asked. With you? Always. They began the ritual, their joined hands glowing with power that had no name, not quite magic, not quite divine, but something older, deeper. The threads connecting them to the volunteers blazed to life, and the transformation began. But as the power built, as Lysa felt herself beginning to dissolve, she saw through the threads the defenders were failing. The Void Mother herself approached the gates, and once she entered the ritual circle, everything would be lost. They needed more time. They needed a choice. Lysa gasped, understanding finally hitting her. The prophecy, it's not about the transformation. It's about choosing unity, even when it costs everything. She looked at Theron, seeing the same understanding dawn in his eyes. They had to complete the ritual faster, spread themselves thinner, risk not just dispersion, but complete dissolution. They might save everyone and lose themselves entirely, not even existing in others, just gone. Together? Theron asked one last time. Forever, Lysa confirmed. They made their choice. The moment Lysa and Theron pushed beyond the ritual's safe boundaries, reality cracked. Power erupted from them, not in a controlled stream but a torrent, their essence flooding into the 300 volunteers with violent intensity. Lysa felt herself fragmenting, each piece of her consciousness splitting among dozens of minds. Through 100 eyes, she saw the battlefield Sarah falling beneath corrupted claws, Jarek's last stand at the gates, the Void Mother's dragon form crushing the outer walls. Asterisk. Hold on. Asterisk. Theron's voice echoed through their shared existence, but she could barely distinguish it from her own thoughts anymore. The volunteers screamed as transformation took them, not the gradual change the ritual promised, but instant, agonizing evolution. Human bones shattered and reformed, wolf bodies twisted into new configurations, and through it all, Lysa felt every second of their pain as her own. Asterisk. Too fast, asterisk, she thought desperately. Asterisk. We're losing them. Asterisk. Some volunteers began to dissolve, their forms unable to handle the rapid transformation. But then something unexpected happened. Those who had already transformed reached out, sharing their strength with those still changing. The threads between them blazed silver bright, creating a network of support that had never existed before. Through fading individual consciousness, Lysa saw the truth: they weren't creating 300 Moonweavers. They were creating one unified being with 300 bodies, all connected by threads of shared existence. The Void Mother burst through the final defenses, her dragon form towering above the ritual circle. "Fools!" she roared. "You're destroying yourselves. You'll be nothing but echoes and empty shells." But as her entropic breath washed over the circle, it met not vulnerable individuals, but a unified field of transformed energy. The volunteers know, the unified, as Lysa suddenly understood them to be stood as one, their combined power deflecting the attack. Asterisk. Now. Asterisk. Theron's essence merged with hers completely, and together they made the final push. Lysa felt herself scatter like starlight, each fragment carrying memory, power, love. She was the young mother who'd volunteered despite her children's tears, giving her the fierce protectiveness of a parent. She was the old wolf warrior who'd fought in dozen wars, granting her his battle wisdom. She was every soul in the circle, and they were her. But even as she dispersed, she felt Theron doing something different. Instead of spreading evenly, he was gathering the darkest parts of the transformation, the dangerous aspects that could corrupt the unified. He was making himself a shield, a filter, ensuring that what spread to the volunteers was pure. Asterisk, no. Asterisk, she tried to call out, but she was already too scattered. She could only watch through 300 pairs of eyes as Theron's essence darkened, condensed, began to burn away. The Void Mother struck then, pouring all her power into destroying the ritual, but she was too late. The transformation was complete, and what rose to meet her wasn't an army but a single entity with many forms. The unified moved like water, like wind, like thought itself. Where the Void Mother struck one, 10 others responded. Her corruption met synthesis and was neutralized. Her entropy met creation and was reversed. "Impossible!" she screamed, her form beginning to crack. "I am eternal! I am ending itself!" Through the unified, Lysa felt a familiar presence, Kai's voice, somehow preserved in the threads of fate themselves, his essence having merged with the great tapestry when he died. Asterisk. The choice isn't between human and wolf, it's between division and unity. Asterisk. Understanding flooded through her scattered consciousness. The Void Mother fed on division, on the spaces between beings. But here there were no spaces, only connection, only unity. The unified spoke with 300 voices in perfect harmony. "You are ending. We are beginning." They reached out together, not to destroy, but to embrace. The Void Mother tried to pull back, but she was a creature of consumption, and when she touched the unified, she found nothing to consume, only an invitation to join, to transform, to become part of something greater. "No!" she writhed, her dragon form dissolving. "I will not be absorbed. I will not lose myself." But the unified's embrace was inexorable. Where the Void Mother expected destruction, she found acceptance. Where she brought endings, they offered new beginnings. In her final moments, the ancient being's true form was revealed, a frightened, lonely creature that had fed on division because she feared connection, destroyed bonds because she'd never had one. The unified embraced her anyway. The explosion of her transformation lit up the night sky, visible for miles. When it faded, the Void Mother was gone, but something new had been added to the unified, an understanding of endings that made their beginnings more precious. But victory came at a cost. As the unified stood victorious, Lysa searched desperately through their shared consciousness for Theron. She found fragments, echoes, but the concentrated darkness he'd absorbed to protect the others had burned away much of his individual essence. Asterisk, I'm here. Asterisk. His voice whispered through their bond, faint as morning mist. Asterisk. Different, dispersed, but here. We did it, my heart. We became the bridge. Asterisk. Through 300 throats, Lysa screamed her grief and joy, her love and loss. They had won, they had evolved, but the price? Then she felt it in every transformed soul. A piece of Theron's shadow lingered, just as her threads connected them all. They weren't gone. They were everywhere. 6 months had passed since the night of unity, as history would remember it. Lysa stood, though stood, wasn't quite right anymore in the great hall of Shadowmere Keep. She existed primarily in a body that looked like her original form, but she could feel herself in every other unified throughout the kingdom. Through their eyes, she watched the sunrise from 300 different locations, felt the joy of human and wolf children playing together in streets that had once run with blood. The Western settlements have agreed to the transformation, Vera reported, her own form flickering between wolf and human with practiced ease. As one of the unified, she could choose her shape moment by moment. How many volunteers? Lysa asked, though she already knew through the threads. 500 in the first wave. The success of the integration has convinced even the skeptics. The ritual had been refined since that first desperate night. With the unified as anchors, the transformation was safer, still challenging, but no longer the desperate gamble it had been. Each new member added to their collective strength, their shared consciousness, their unified purpose. My lady, a young messenger approached, then paused. My ladies? Lords? I'm never sure how to address. Just unified is fine. Lysa smiled. We are many and one. The messenger nodded. The monument is ready for unveiling. Lysa flowed walking, was too simple a word through the castle to the courtyard where a crowd had gathered. Humans, wolves, and unified stood side by side, no longer separated by species or suspicion. The monument stood covered in silver cloth, commissioned to remember those who'd fallen in the final battle, but Lysa had added something more. As the cloth fell away, gasps rippled through the crowd. The sculpture showed not a battle, but a transformation, hundreds of figures flowing into and out of each other, human becoming wolf, becoming something new. At its heart, two figures stood embraced, their forms so intertwined it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Theron, Sarah whispered, standing beside Lysa. Her sister had survived the battle, scarred but alive. One of the few who'd chosen to remain unchanged. You captured him perfectly. And through the unified, Lysa felt him respond, not words, but a warm presence, a ripple of love through 300 hearts. He was more dispersed than her, his sacrifice having spread him thinner, but he was there in every shadow, every protective instinct, every moment of courage the unified displayed. Asterisk my heart. Asterisk his voice whispered through their eternal bond. Asterisk. My shadow asterisk, she responded, feeling him smile through a dozen faces. Quote, the other kingdoms are watching. Jarek approached, also unchanged but bearing new scars with pride. They're calling us an abomination, a corruption of natural order. Let them, Lysa said. But her voice carried the harmony of the unified. We were an abomination to each other once, human and wolf, predator and prey. Now we're something new. They'll either join us eventually or fade into history. A child tugged at her skirt, one of the new generation, born after the unity. The girl's eyes shifted from brown to gold to silver, marking her as touched by the change without being fully part of it. Lady Lysa, the child asked, are you happy, even though you're not you anymore? Lysa knelt, bringing herself to the child's level. Through the unified, she felt Theron's presence strengthen, his essence flowing to join hers more fully for this moment. "I'm more myself than I ever was," she said gently. "Before I was one person trying to bridge two worlds. Now I am the bridge. We are the bridge." The child considered this seriously. "My mama says you gave up everything to save us." "No." Lysa smiled. And through her, 300 others smiled too. "We gave up separation to gain unity. We gave up loneliness to gain connection. We gave up one love to gain hundreds." As if to demonstrate, the unified throughout the courtyard moved in subtle synchronization, not controlled but connected, each individual, yet part of the whole. They were doctors and warriors, crafters and scholars, parents and children, but they were also one vast, loving, protective entity that would never again allow division to tear their world apart. "Will you teach me?" the child asked suddenly. "When I'm older, will you help me become unified too?" "If you choose it," Lysa promised. "The bridge is always open to those who wish to cross." As the ceremony continued, as people celebrated the 6-month anniversary of their new world's birth, Lysa felt a familiar presence strengthen. Through the crowd, a figure approached, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that shifted from amber to shadow. It wasn't Theron, not exactly. It was one of the unified in whom his essence ran strongest, someone who could hold his form when he concentrated his dispersed consciousness. He held out his hand to her. "Dance with me," he said with Theron's voice, Theron's smile, Theron's love. She took his hand, and they danced as the sun set over Shadowmere. Around them, other unified pairs found each other, fragments of the original bond, seeking itself across many bodies. They were apart, together, many, one, human, wolf, and something beautifully, impossibly new. "Do you regret it?" he whispered, spinning her under stars that seemed to shine brighter than before. "Never," she answered, and meant it with every fiber of her dispersed being. They had come to the castle as enemies, she to betray, he to control. But fate had other plans. Love had other plans. And in choosing each other, in choosing unity over division, they had become something eternal. As the night deepened, as the unified sang in perfect harmony, Lysa understood the final truth. They hadn't lost themselves in the transformation. They had found themselves not as individuals, but as what they were always meant to be. The bridge between worlds, the unity after division, the love that conquered death itself. And in every transformed soul, in every thread of connection, in every shadow and light, Lysa and Theron's love continued, not ending but eternal. Not separate but whole, not two but one but many but complete. The war was over, the unity had begun. And somewhere in the threads of fate, she could swear she heard Kai laughing, young and free and proud of what they'd become. They were the Moonweavers. They were the Shadow Walkers. They were the unified. They were home. She came to infiltrate and betray. He turned her mission into destiny. They became the bridge between worlds. In unity, they found not death, but transformation. Not ending, but eternal beginning. The Alpha King and his spy, forever one, forever many, forever whole.